I tell in-laws my husband should DNA test his children from the first marriage, but I'm immediately, I never thought I'd be the villain at my own dinner table. But there I was, watching my husband's face crumple like paper in a fire. The words had slipped out, sharp and irreversible, slicing through the chatter of a family gathering like a guillotine. I think Mark should DNA test the kids from his first marriage. Silence, the kind that sucks the air out of a room. Forks froze mid-bite, and my mother-in-law's wine glass hovered an inch from her lips, her eyes wide with something between horror and rage. I hadn't meant to say it like that, not so blunt, not so brutal, but the truth has a way of clawing its way out when you've held it in too long. And I'd been holding it for years. My name is Emily, and I married Mark 3 years ago, a widower with two grown kids, Ethan and Lily, from his first marriage to Sarah. Sarah died when the kids were young, and Mark raised them alone, pouring every ounce of his soul into being their rock. I admired that about him. I loved him for it. But love doesn't erase doubts, and doubts don't stay quiet forever. The seed was planted early. A whisper from a nosy neighbor at our engagement party, Sarah, was complicated. Did you know she traveled a lot before the kids were born? I brushed it off. Gossip, I thought, but then I found the letters. They were tucked in an old shoebox in the attic, hidden under Christmas decorations. Sarah's handwriting, elegant and looping, spilled across pages addressed to someone named Jay, not Mark. The letters were vague but intimate, hinting at secrets, rendezvous, and promises. One line burned into my brain. I'll tell him soon, but not yet. It's too much. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself it was nothing, a friend, a cousin, a misunderstanding. But the dates on the letters overlapped with Ethan's birth, then Lily's. My stomach churned every time I looked at those kids, so much like Mark in their dark eyes and quick smiles. But now with a shadow of doubt I couldn't shake. Mark and I built a life together, a good one. I brought my own daughter, Ava, into the marriage, and we blended our families as best we could. Ethan and Lily were in college now, polite but distant, always carrying the weight of their mother's memory like a shield. I tried to be their friend, not a replacement, but the gap between us never closed. And that box in the attic, it grew heavier every day, until it felt like it was pressing on my chest, stealing my breath. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration, Mark's 50th birthday. His parents, Diane and Richard, flew in from Florida, all smiles and stories about Mark's childhood. Ethan and Lily came home from school, and Ava was there, beaming at her stepdad. The table was set with Diane's favorite china, and I'd spent hours on the roast, wanting everything perfect. But perfection is a lie when secrets simmer beneath the surface. It started innocently enough. Diane was reminiscing about Sarah, how she'd been the perfect daughter-in-law, how Ethan had her nose, how Lily had her laugh. I nodded, smiled, sipped my wine, but each word felt like a needle. Then Richard said, "Mark, you're lucky those kids turned out so well. Sarah was a wild one back in the day." He chuckled, but my heart stopped. Wild one. The letters flashed in my mind, and before I could stop myself, I blurted it out. "I think Mark should DNA test the kids from his first marriage." The room imploded. Diane's glass clinked against the table. Richard's fork dropped. Ethan's jaw tightened, and Lily's eyes filled with tears. Mark looked at me like I'd stabbed him. "Emily," he said, his voice low, trembling. "What are you talking about?" I tried to backtrack, to soften it, but the dam had broken. "I found letters," I said, my voice shaking. "Sarah wrote them to someone else. They were personal, from before the kids were born. I just think maybe we should be sure." Diane stood, her chair scraping the floor. "How dare you," she hissed. "Sarah was family. You're accusing her of what? Cheating, betraying my son." Her voice cracked, and I saw the pain in her eyes, the kind that comes from losing someone you loved and now defending their ghost. Ethan pushed his plate away. "You're saying we're not his kids." His voice was cold, but his hands were shaking. Lily was crying now, her face buried in her hands. Ava, my sweet Ava, looked at me with confusion, like she didn't recognize her own mother. Mark didn't speak. He just stared at the table, his knuckles white around his napkin. I wanted to reach for him, to take it all back, but I couldn't. The truth was out, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. The rest of the dinner was a blur. Diane and Richard left early, their goodbyes curt. Ethan stormed out, Lily trailing behind him, whispering, "How could you?" Ava went to her room, and Mark and I sat in silence until he finally said, "Why didn't you tell me first?" I tried to explain the letters, the doubts, the weight of it all, but he shook his head. "You didn't trust me enough to talk to me. You went straight to humiliating my kids." He slept on the couch that night. The next week was a storm of its own. Ethan refused to answer my calls. Lily sent me a text, "I don't know who you think you are, but you're not my mom." Diane called Mark daily, urging him to fix this, which meant fixing me. I felt like an outsider in my own home, the villain in a story I hadn't meant to write, but I couldn't let it go. I ordered a DNA test kit online, my hands trembling as I clicked purchase. When it arrived, I left it on the kitchen counter, a silent question. Mark found it that evening and stared at it like it was a bomb. "You're serious about this?" he said, not a question. "I just want the truth," I said. "Don't you?" He didn't answer. But the next day, he called Ethan and Lily. They came over, reluctant, their eyes avoiding mine. Mark explained everything calmly, carefully about the letters, my doubts, the test. Ethan scoffed, but Lily looked at her dad with something like fear. "You don't believe her, do you?" she asked. Mark hesitated, and that hesitation broke something in all of us. "I don't know what to believe," he said finally, "but I love you both, no matter what." They agreed to the test, more for Mark than for me. We sent the samples off, and the waiting was torture. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at Ava without wondering if I'd ruined her family too. The results came back 2 weeks later, in a plain white envelope that felt heavier than the world. Mark opened it alone. I watched his face as he read, searching for relief, anger, anything. He handed me the paper without a word. Ethan and Lily were his, biologically, undeniably his. The relief should have been overwhelming, but all I felt was shame. I'd torn open old wounds, questioned a dead woman's loyalty, and hurt the people I loved most. All for nothing. I apologized to Mark, to Ethan, to Lily, to Diane and Richard. I poured my heart out, explaining how fear and doubt had twisted me into someone I didn't recognize. Mark listened, his face unreadable. Ethan nodded but said little. Lily cried but hugged me, whispering, "I just want us to be okay." Diane was colder, her forgiveness thin, but Richard squeezed my hand and said, "We all make mistakes, kid." The weeks that followed were fragile. Mark and I talked more than we had in years, about trust, about secrets, about how to rebuild. Ethan started answering my texts again, short but polite. Lily came over for coffee one morning, and we talked about her mom, not the letters, but the woman she remembered, flawed but loving. Ava, bless her, never stopped hugging me, even when I didn't deserve it. But the scars remained. I'd forced a family to question their foundation, and even though the truth had set us free in one way, it had cost us something too. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal perfectly. It leaves cracks, and I was learning to live with them. Looking back, I wonder if I was wrong not about the doubt, but about how I handled it. I could have talked to Mark privately, spared the kids the pain, spared Sarah's memory, but I also wonder if keeping secrets is its own kind of betrayal. The truth hurts, but so does silence. I don't know where the line is, and maybe I never will. What do you think? Was I wrong to demand the truth, or was I right to question it? Share your thoughts. I'm still trying to make sense of mine.